Hey everybody, welcome to my workshop here at Miller's Farm Shop. This video today is going to be all about hollowing the hollow form. If you remember a few weeks back, we turned this lovely bit of view into a hollow form. What I didn't do though is show you how we hollow that out because of the time it takes to do that and the fact that this hollow form has a very small opening, and I just didn't feel that you'd be able to see everything. Now we've had a few comments since saying it's a shame that you didn't show the hollowing out and all that, the rest of it. So I get that, I get your feedback. So we're going to do that now. We're going to do another hollow form, but this time we're going to have a hollow form with an open hollow, so you can see what's happening. And we're just going to go over the different types of hollowing tool as well that you can use, and the reasons that you might want to use different ones as well. Because I have my favourite, my go-to being the Woodcut, the ProForme. But there are times where I will need to go to another type, and really just for practical reasons. We'll talk about that in a moment. So I'm just going to take this one away. This was the one that we done. Like I say, it's nice. I really like this sort of shape. But look at the hole in the middle. There's no way you would have seen anything that's happening in there. So we're going to use a nice big piece of ash. I'm just going to put this hollow form out of our way just for the moment. A nice piece of ash. I cut this morning. This will not be, so this is just practically for what we're going to do. We're not going to finish this piece off. I'm not going to sand the outside or anything like that. We're going to get a rough shape, and then we're going to look at how to hollow. The reason I say that, this is ash. It's wet ash, and it will split. So already I'm getting a split from the piths centered out, and I only cut this morning. So I know that will happen. So because it's wet, it won't last. So if I wanted to do an ash vessel, then I would need to come either side of the pith, so one of the other sides. So this is just going to be for a demonstration purpose. Okay. So we're going to hold this between centers. I'm going to choose to use a 4-prong drive just because, and we're going to tap that 4-prong drive in. So I'm going through the whole process, not just a hollowing out. But I'm not, like I said, I'm just not sanding afterwards. And to be fair, when it comes to doing a hollow form in wet timber, it's really nice. It's beautiful to turn. Ribbons stream off. I'm going to use a nice big 1/2-inch gouge if the center will allow me. Make sure you're nice and secure, both sides. And like I said, we're going to keep the form open so you can see what's happening with these tools. I'm going to use a nice big gripper type jaw to hold. So let's go fairly long tool rest. We'll take this down to a cylinder, and then we'll create our hold point. So lay speed down to 0 first. So the gripper jaw I'm going to use is referred to as a type G, gripper type G. There we are. And we'll have all the information on this in the description and in the links with the video. So gripper type G on an SK114 Axminster chuck, and this is going to give us a really nice hold point in the middle to do some really heavy hollowing as well. So that's what we're going to measure in a moment. Okay, so first of all, let's get that down to a usable dimension. So hopefully you'll be able to see as we go the form created, but it's going to be a fairly simple one. I'm going to use a nice big 1/2-inch gouge. Look here. Let's get the speed up a little bit. Being a little bit cautious to start with because I've only got a 1-inch 4-prong drive here. Already these ribbons, you can see them peeling away beautifully. And if you've never done any wetwood turning before, I'd certainly encourage you to have a go because it is such fun. You may get a little wet while you're doing it because this sap is going to be flowing all over the place. So you might want to protect the workshop from flying sap. So just nice and gentle, just to begin with. And if you've never done any hollow forms before, I would encourage you to do the sort of shape that we're about to do. Nice big open vessel so you can see what's going on. just put in a very slight undercut to this, what will be the foot. The gouge I'm using here is a 1/2 inch. It's a Crown M42 tool. It's a 1/2 inch, 12mm flute. Nice, long and strong. There we are. Let's start thinking about dimensions. So if I take a set of calipers, I'll just quickly measure those G jaws. Go a little bit bigger. There we go. So we're spot on. That was luck than judgment. Now a little bit deeper. Now, a nice square base. I just want to get right into that corner there. So let's just take some. Let's go with a parting tool, just to give that corner a nice clean finish. There we go. That's all good. And I think then I'll get a rough form on this. So I'll bring the bottom around just a little bit. Get rid of all the bark. There we are, just so we can get a sort of a hint of a curve. I know I've said to you already that we're not actually going to finish this one, but I still want to, it's just, it's almost an important part of what we're going to do, that we have a rough shape, you know, half decent shape. So that's it, that's the outside so far. Now we're going to put that chuck on. So center comes out, G-jaw goes on, and our first job will be to drill. It will come out in a minute. Right. There's be a little burr inside there, 'cause that never happens normally. So now, G-jaw. The G part of the name, there is no real relevance to that. It's just, that was the name given in that order that they were made originally. They are a gripper jaw. G does not stand for gripper because we have a gripper type H, gripper type B, F. So we have several types of gripper. There we are. We'll move that tailstock in a minute, but first of all, we're just going to clean that surface off. I need to drill a hole. Most hollowing tools require a hole in the center. They don't like the center pith. If suddenly it picks up on the center, you'll never get any depth to your hollow form. So we do need to drill first. And we'll talk about the drill bits in a minute, because now we're going to be drilling into the end grain, because this is going down through the center of the tree. So first of all, let's just clean up. Slightly smaller gouge, not for any reason, just that it's a little bit more convenient to get into that tight space. There we go. Now I'm just going to pop a little, with the skew, a little pit, a little hole, just right in the center. The reason I'm doing that, I'm just going to line up, just make sure the head and the tailstock are meeting up. I don't need to adjust anything. Tool rest can come right out of the way. And our center's going to come out now, because we're going to pop a drill chuck in there. And I'm going to try my best to stay in camera shot. We need quite a wide camera for this, because the tools are all quite long. So, keyless drill chuck. That can go on in, and I'm going to use a beam drill. Quite a big beam drill. This one's probably about 25 to 30 mil, quite a biggie. And we're going to go down to where that green tape is. It's almost like we've done this before. There we are. Lock that in nicely, and let's just double check that center point is on center. We're as close as. And this is wet timber, so what's going to happen as we start drilling, we're going to those fibers are going to expand as they come out. The important thing for you to do is make sure you keep that lubricated, either with your finishing wax, or in this case I've got some beeswax, just a beeswax lump. I would avoid things like paraffin wax. Paraffin wax tends to it'll stain the timber, so a little bit of your finishing wax will be much better. I'm going to bring the control box over with me so it's right close to where I am, because I'm actually now back toward the tailstock end. Everything's locked up there apart from this little lever. This needs to be loose, otherwise the quill won't move. Lathe speed is going to be running around about 800 to 1000. There we are, that's 800. I tend to put one hand on the chuck just to feel if there's any chance that it might want to wander, might want to start twisting up. My hand will pick that up fairly quickly. There we are. A little bit of wobble. Don't worry about the wobble. It makes no difference to you when you actually come to do the work. Now we're already getting a bit of friction there. I can feel it. I'm getting resistance, so we're going to load some wax into that. And even though this is wet timber, you will build up a fair bit of heat on this. So don't go touching it with your bare fingers. Make sure you clear this very often. What tends to happen, and I've had it happen to me a couple of times, especially if you're using Forstner bits or sawtooth bits, is that the shavings build up behind the head, and the head being that much wider than the actual shaft itself, and they're built up behind there, then push against the drill bit and the timber. So the drill bit will actually be moving around, but you won't get it out. It creates a plug that's pretty much impenetrable. And then that does cause a bit of a problem. So just waxing up through the piece. Now remember, this is going to go all the way in, so I want to make sure we've got a good waxed drill bit. We're dealing with, you know, fairly big drill bits here, so and you get a really horrible screech if you get too much friction on these things. So again, clear the shavings, wax the bit up. And this is real time wisely spent doing this. Like I say, if you leave it and try and just hollow out the center pith as well, you'll struggle. You'll really have a fight on your hands. There we're almost there. But even though we're almost there, don't get lazy. If you think, I just need to go in another inch, but it's starting to bind, pull it back again and just do a wax run. Don't want to get a bit stuck. There we are. We're to full depth now, so that can come out the way. One little tip here, when you're drilling on the lathe, just bear in mind that most lathes have a center ejector, and that center ejector is where the quill gets moved back too far, and there's a little pin inside which pushes against the end of the Morse taper, and that will physically eject the centers. Now if that happens when your drill's cutting, or if you're winding back with the drill bit still in there, the whole chuck will start rotating, and you'll have to stop the lathe and then pull the drill bit out manually. So be aware of that one. I've put a little line for my students here. Do not pass line. So if you go further back, then your center ejector is going to start operating. There we are, that's good. So drill strut can come out. That's hot, that is hot, so just be a little bit careful of that one. We'll put that to one side. Right, now I can take turn the lathe off, I can take the tailstock right off, get that out of my way. Let's just have a look at types of hollower and the reasons for having different types of hollower apart from different manufacturers make them. So my favourite, I'm sure most of you know now, my favourite is the ProForme. There we are, ProForme. ProForme handle, but the ProForme itself, the cutter, that particular one's a straight cutter. Okay, you've got a straight cutter. We then can go to a partially bent bar. Cutters are all the same, but it's type of bar. So partially bent bar, that just helps when hooking over a little bit further. You then go to what we refer to as a swan neck. Okay, so a very bent bar. So that will get you right underneath the hook. So the little hollow, the big hollow form, the U one that we done the other day, still has parts of the U on here. To get underneath the shoulder of that little hole, you'll need a swan neck. Now whenever you use something like this, you have to have the tool rest on the flat section of bar. So here, you can't have it here, because if you do that it'll twist. Has to be at that point or further back. If you're going deep into a hollow form, nothing wrong with having this all the way down and having that section of bar on the tool rest. It gives you far more stability and strength. If you're doing a particularly deep one, then what you can do also is add handles on handles. So you see we've got two handles on this one. That gives me a lot more leverage. The bar is right the way back, so that's on the tool rest then. So that's for your big pieces. You know, very rarely you're going to get them, but every now and again you might need to. You'll need to make sure you have the lathe that can cope with big pieces like that. Not so much the cutting themselves, than the distance away from the bearings in the headstock to cope with a hollow form of that size. Now, all of the ProForme cut, they're actually slicing. The way it works, and Tom, I'm not sure where we can go with this one to see this better. That's brilliant. So if you look at that cutter, what we have is a brass shield on top. That's our bevel, effectively. And it's the gap between that and the cutter on the underside which gives us the thickness of cut. So it's quite a protected cut. That's how you can go so deep in hollow forms away from the tool rest. And for that reason I love this tool. It will create ribbons as opposed to dust. You've got to sharpen it properly, and the way we sharpen it, you can see the bevel here, and we're going to take, and I'll do it on a cutter that doesn't have a handle on it. If I grab one of my cutters, I'm going to use a little diamond card. I have set the tool mech up with a little jig to do this, but if you plant your finger inside that exhaust area there, and then use your diamond card, make sure you bed it flat, and then it's a little circular action as you come around that corner. And you won't need to do much with this. It's keep it sharp rather than wait for them to go dull. And it's very important with a ProForme or any type of cutting hollower that they stay razor sharp. The minute they go dull, that's where you're going to run into problems with them clogging up and things like that. So really sharp, around nice and clean. What we don't want to have here is a hollow grind. Don't ever think of taking these to a bench grinder, any dry form of grinding. You will run into problems and you'll probably ruin these fairly quickly. Okay, so nice diamond card will do the job there. Let's pop that one back a minute. We are going to use the straight cutter in a second, just to show you. Now there may be occasions, let's say for instance we're doing a hollow form that's got a very, very tiny hole or opening. The fantastic shavings a ProForme can give will cause us a problem, because they're going to bunch up in the middle and they're not going to come out. You have to dig them out with a hook, something like an old coat hanger bent around to hook shavings out. That works really, really well. But if you want to just pour them out, then you need to create chips, not shavings. And if you want to do that, then that will be then going down to your scraping type of hollower to produce chips rather than shavings. Now, I've got a couple variations here to show you. I've got several variations to show you, but these are a couple of my woodcut ones. Well done, Tom. There's a couple of my woodcut ones. So again, they're big hollowers, so they're big bars on these. But I've got two types of head in this. Again, if we can go to that overhead again, please. Lovely. Get myself in position. So the two types of head, I've got a carbide round cutter here, and then we've got a hook cutter here. For doing the same thing as the ProForme, but this is slightly offset, and this will get to the undercut of a small bowl, a small hollow form, by the length of its cutter here. I would say they're not as stable as the ProFormer in any way at all, but they do take material out very quickly, especially this one. And then you just replace the carbide cutter when you need to. So that's quite a nice one. They're nice if producing a very small opening pot. Other ones you can make your own, of course. Here's a couple of Sorby ones that I've got. These are what we refer to as straight probes, but these come also as bent. So you can get these just on the overhead there, Tom. You can get these as swan neck, or you get them as straight. The straight one's called probes, and the swan neck's called swan necks. But again, you've got a little pivoting cutter. I've reground some of these to a particular shape just to have less cutter actually active at the time. So different bar thicknesses for different size of hollow form. Then making your own, so some old wood turning tools. Got a little bit short, so these are for tiny little hollow forms, and that will allow me to get right in, hook underneath. I've just ground portions of it away so I can get right in. So there's lots of other types available on the market, of course, and everyone's got their favorite. And let's just hollow out now with, I'll give you an idea of how they all work differently. So I'm going to start with my favorite. Need to make sure that you've got solid material touching the tool rest, of course. Now my position. This is not my hollowing lathe, so I've got a few things here in my way, so excuse me. Here's my position. So when I said to you about having handle upon handle, if you imagine a hollow form double the length of this one, so going way back, then I need to have this hooked under my shoulder, and I've sort of got bent knees, so I'm sort of carrying the cut really. And you just got to take your time. It's a patience game really with hollow forms. But what we don't want to have is a fight on our hands too much. So just nice and patient. Just bringing my controller over here. Lathe speed down to 0. Turn the machine on. Turn the machine up. There we go. And to start with this one especially, I'm going to start with the tool over. And I'm just going to very gently bring the cut into play, about there, and then I'm going to swing out. Now you can see the shavings coming out in the exhaust on the underside. Swing again. Swing again. Now I hope you can see how quickly, how rapidly these tools can cut. I've opened this one up fairly big for roughing out. So I can close it down. If I wanted to make a finer cut, I can close it down a little bit, or I can just tip it over. By tipping it over, and you didn't see that, it was quite a subtle movement. Extreme cut would be dead upright for me. Just to close the cut down a bit, I just tip into the workpiece a little bit. But look, I'm going to do a nice big cut this time. Whee! Tool rest move then and frightened me, that one. Tool rest move, so dropped a little bit, so let's tighten that up a little bit. There we are. Now, in terms of your in terms of your grip, hang on, I've opened my cutter. Now one thing that done there, my cutter, one thing, I don't know if you can see that, my cutter just opened, so I just need to close that. So that was good timing. This little bevel up here, the brass covered, the brass coloured one, is on a little cam. So what I'll do is just undo that bolt, close that down a little bit. So you've got a little tool for that. Bring that back, close him down. Give it a test. And all that was because my tool rest just dropped at the worst possible moment. Do it again, so slowly bring that cutter up, and there we are. Back into those nice ribbons. You can see them just streaming away from the bottom. And look how valuable it was to have that center hole there. Now as we finish each cut, what I'm doing, I'm just stopping a little bit before I hit the wall of the previous cut. I think you can see it, so it's slowly tapering in that way. What we can do is do a probing cut. So the probing cut really just to take that some of that wall away. And again. And again. So every now and again, what you might find, a shaving like that just creeps in front of the cutter. So just bring the tool out, clear it carefully, and then go back in again. Now, let's just stop with that one for 5 minutes. That was working so nicely, it's so addictive that I just want to carry on. However, let's look at a slightly different type. We'll look at the carbide cutter head. So with this one, we're not going to get the shavings that we got from the woodcut. We will get shavings because it's wet timber, but look, now I'm producing more those sort of feathery, it's not dust so much, but it's chip-like. So if your hollow form is particularly small in its opening, you might find that this benefits you in that you could probably cut for a little bit longer and then pour the shavings out like water. But for me, personally, I find it a little bit harder work. There's more pressure involved. You get a little bit more chatter, and it's not as clean a cut. And that's with all of that type, all of the probe types, the Sorby ones that I've just shown you as well. That's why I always prefer going back to that cutting type with it and the woodcut. Now I'm just going to show you one more thing. I'm just going to stop that lathe just for 5 seconds, and I want to show you a hollow form which is roughed out, so ready to finish. And I tend to do a lot of hollow forms like that rather than finish from the start. I like to hollow them out first, let them dry. So no different than rough turning a bowl, for instance. This would be roughed out, so I would take it at this state, soaking wet, rough them out, take away all that center, so that as they dry, they can go oval, but they're not going to split purely because you've taken away the stress. Then go back, using the same tool, so clean up the outside, using the same woodcut on the inside then to hollow out that inside, knowing that that's dry in about 6 months, as opposed to, I don't know, that piece, that would have been about a 4 to 5 year drying period if it was left in plank form. So that really saves me a massive amount of time, taking it down to about 6 months as opposed to 4 or 5 years. Pop on one side. So let's carry on and do a little bit of hollowing. So if I was going to leave that as rough, I'm probably too thin at this stage, so I'm going to carry on and do a bit more anyway. Let's take it down thin as if we're going to leave it, because you can do that. I wouldn't do it with this piece of timber because we've got the centre pith in it, but if you wanted to turn wet and leave it really, really thin and let it move, that can make some awesome shapes depending on the timber that you're going to use. Fruit timbers are wonderful for that, but just make sure that that centre pith comes out. If you go ultra thin, and I'm talking 2 mil, so less than 1/8, then again it becomes more eggshell, so it can dry and turn leather-like rather than crack again. But you've got to go really thin for that to happen. So let's take this down a little bit further. Look how well that cutter's cutting. And one more. We're getting to about the point where we can start thinking about moving the tool rest again. One of the interesting things when it comes to the lathe that I'm working on, or the nice things with the lathe that I'm working on, and most lathes are like this now, it's got a swiveling headstock, but it's also got a headstock that can move up and down the lathe. What I don't want to be doing when I'm doing a hollow form is stood here reaching out, because now my body is going to be hurting, my back's going to be in pain. So I want to be able to stand either in front of the machine, so here, or pivot that headstock around so I'm stood up straight again. The minute I start leaning over the lathe, that's a back issue waiting to happen. So I can start here, I can get right in front of it, I can really gauge what's happening, I can get my knees down low and be comfortable with my turning. There we are. Now, if that was a hollow form with a tiny, tiny opening, that would be the point where I'm stopping. I'm getting the hook in there and I'm hooking those shavings out, just so they stop clogging the lathe up. Now, I'm going to show you, if I can find my hook tool, I think I'll put it here. I just had a little hook tool that we're using. Where is it? There it is. Bit of old bar, just with a thumped and beaten hook in it, and that is used to go in and hook those shavings out of a small opening, which is really, really quite handy. There we are. Let's move that tool rest in a bit closer now, because we can. We'll do a little bit more. Clear some of those shavings. We're going to bring the tool rest up. Almost getting to the point now where you can't really see inside. So we've got the next wall thickness there, so let's do that plunge cut again. Tom, if you just switch cameras, I'm just going to change this one a little bit just so everyone can see. Try and get you a little bit closer to the action. There we go. All right. Get rid of some of those shavings, plunge cut. Another look, again another plunge. Now, the added complication of not being able to see what you're doing is obvious. However, what you would need to do there, I can quite easily at the moment sort of gauge visually where we're going. And I can get the fingers in there. Actually, that's really quite even. I'm happy with that. But what we would want to do is, in a concealed small opening hollow form, is use your double-ended calipers. So this is the sort of thing we're using. And so now, if I get that right the way down, maybe the number 1 camera, please, Tom. You can see here, if I hold that up, we've got, this is pinching here, and whatever the thickness is that's pinching is registered back here. So it gives me a good idea of how thick everything is. It's the only way when you're in a closed form to register that, that thickness. But here at the moment I can get fingers in there, I can see visually what's happening. I'd still want to use those just to make sure. I think we can carry on and do a little bit more. Let's go a little bit more from the wall. So quick to cut because it's a constant stream of shavings that you're producing. You can see there that those shavings are constant, so it's a very, very quick way of hollowing out. Getting to that, the drill hole at the bottom was a little bit running out, so it's a little bit hit and miss there, but you've still got a good start for your cut. We're going to do another thickness cut in a minute. I should have a monitor beside me when I'm hollowing more often. It's far easier to see from that angle than my actual eyes themselves. There we are. Let's stop and clear some shavings. Look at that. It's incredible what you can get out of these. Again, almost we're about, I would say, probably 3/4 of an inch away from the bottom of that hole. About 19-20 mil. plunge cuts. We are at the bottom of that hole. So you've got a choice here now. You can put the tailstock back on and do another cut with the drill bit. But that drill bit went right into there. So let's just clean this out, see where we are. Remember, this isn't going to be a finished bit, but I'd like to get to the end of it for you so you can see. Yeah, just there is quite a lot in the bottom of that bowl still. So we'll do a little bit more. So plunge cut first, because I can see the transition line. Right, we'll have another clear out of the shavings. Another plunge cut. And we're pretty much there. We're getting there now. If I was going to finish this bowl, I would want to probably go in another 1/2 inch. And just following the same process as we've already done. Alright, let's just have a look at that. I want to do a cleaning cut because we're going to take a look in there. So a bit of a flat bottom at the moment. We'll do another plunge cut. I'll try and just bring that bottom around a little bit. Just that centre pith. Remember what I said about not having a hole there? It's just a little bit stubborn sometimes. You've got to wiggle that tool up and down. There. Now I'm going to call that. We're going to finish there. Let's have a proper look inside. We'll show the camera. So, in fact, before I do that, let's get a set of calipers on there. I just wanted to show you. You can see where we are. So that's registering there about 5 millimeters. So we're a little bit more down the bottom, more like 10. There we are. You can see there. As we get further down, that's going to get wider and wider and wider. So I've got probably about 25 mil an inch at the thickest bit at the bottom. That really, we want to even that up. If you're going to dry it, definitely. If you're going to leave it wet to dry. Hollow form, I just leave it about 3/4 of an inch, 19-20 mil all over, and that'll be fine if it's rough turned. Okay, so that's where we are. Now you can see, if I do that and then show that camera, there we are. You can see the sort of finish. That's a good thing with a cutting hollower. You get a lovely, lovely finish on the inside. Now whether that's dry or wet, you'll get that same finish, and then it's a case of fairly easily sanding to sort that out. But yeah, probably another 10-15 minutes on that on the inside, and that'll hollow that out nicely. Lovely. What I suggest we do, as we're not live today, everybody, questions that you have, you can do that in the chat on this actual video if you're watching it right now, but put questions out on the video for me to answer. I will get to all of your questions. So if you've got anything that's related to hollowing out, hollow form tools, just pop your question in there and I'll get to them and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. So we're on it fairly frequently. So there we are. So that was the ProFormer, but we did look at those other types of hollowing tools, the carbide types, and the type that produces the chips as well. So there's no real which one is best. They have their uses, all of them. My preferred one is the ProFormer because it's easy to use and produces a lovely finish. But your tool is your best tool, you know that, but there we are. So look, I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, if you're not already, we'd love you to subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notifications button, and if you like what you saw today, just give us a thumbs up. Okay, well until next time, thank you very much for watching, and see you again. Bye bye.